Welcome to another exciting episode of the Taoist Corner podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Stewart. This is the low voice edition. Feeling a little under the weather, a little hoarse, but we will get there. If you don't know, this is your first time watching. This is episode 19. What we do here is I work through a book called 365 Tao by Ding Ming-Dao. It is a book about relating Taoist philosophy and the religion to our more modern lifestyles. What is Taoism? Well, Taoism is an ancient philosophy that was created about 2,500 years ago in China by a legendary figure named Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu, the legend has it, was a librarian in the emperor's court, and he decided he was done with his time in life and decided to retire on the outskirts of the country. But before he could leave town, a border guard stopped him and asked him to write down words of wisdom. So he spent the night writing this book, the Tao Te Ching, 81 chapters, more like poems, little stories, words of ways to live your life. And so we're here today to discuss. Ding Ming-Dao took those 81 chapters and wrote a book about how to apply maybe lessons that might seem a little outdated on first pass, but they can be about today. So that's what we're going to do. We work through about 4 or 5 chapters every week. We're on 29% of the way through. We just crossed chapter 100. There are 365 chapters. If you're doing this correctly, you should be doing it 1 chapter per day. Of course, I don't. Because speaking of modern lives, I'm really busy. We have things to do and jobs and children in my case. So here we are. First, few announcements before we get into the chapters. As I stated last week, Project Jade is up and running. That is a new philosophy and religion, spirituality and mindfulness, all the above website, a new professional magazine that I am editing and co-running at projectjade.net every day, every weekday. We have one new article for you so that each writer can have their opportunity to shine. All the authors are paid and supported by the Taoist Online, which is another publication that I run that can be read at thedaoist.online. It's a Medium publication. So if you're a Medium member or you have been a Medium member in the past, I invite you to come back and read. We have about 1,000 writers, almost 1,000 writers. We'll probably have 1,000 writers by the middle of February sometime. So yeah, come on in, join, pick up a cup of coffee or whatever your drink of choice is on this fine Sunday morning, and we will get started with our chapters. And hey, if you like this live streamed version, you should check out the podcast version. What I do is I'll cut this out, we'll edit it down, and I'll release it to all major podcast networks, Apple, Spotify, all the above. Come and find it later on today. But yeah, there's a good thing about streaming and podcasting is streaming. You can mess up and say stuff that you wouldn't really want to go out to anybody else. And then, release it as a podcast. So that's what I do. We are on chapter 103, Reciprocity. Each chapter begins with a little poem and then about 1 page lesson, and then we will discuss it. Here we go. 103. Hands grasp, but also give. Mouth tastes, but also speaks. Nose breathes, but also smells. Eyes see, but also show. Ears hear, but also balance. The hands teach us not to be selfish. The mouth teaches us to give thanks in word and song. The nose teaches us to learn from our environment. The eyes teach us to show compassion and sincerity. The ears teach us to keep our balance. All parts of ourselves both give and receive. They function on a principle of reciprocity inherent in their very character. If our senses are so noble, shouldn't we be as well? The eyes of a dedicated person show an inner fortitude and charisma that the eyes of the ordinary do not. Scientifically, we know that an eye is an eye, a mere organ, yet experimentally, we know that the eyes are virtual windows into the soul. For us to achieve similar depth of character, we must live according to the inherent nobility of our natures. Each one of our senses is not simply an information gathering faculty, but is a channel for expression as well. Reciprocity. So let's think about that for a second. You know, there's a lot of, it's not in just Taoism, but there's a lot of philosophy about eyes, right? And being that way into the soul and looking. And it's true. There's a lot of unwritten kind of truth there, where if you've ever been in love before, if you've ever been in a relationship before, if you have kids, you'd be surprised what you can see just in someone's eyes, whether or not they're lying or telling the truth. You can tell how they can speak to you without speaking. I watched this, I don't know why I was watching it, but several years ago I was watching Tyra Banks's, I think it was called America's Next Top Model. And she was getting on to one of the models about being able to smile through your eyes alone, right? So you can smile without smiling. And I'm not going to do it for you, for those of you who are watching the video. But it worked. It did. It really worked. And it was very interesting. Just the sheer control we have over our eyes and how expressive those can be. Our words can tell lies, but the eyes never lie, right? Is the saying. I think that's what this is getting at here, right? Let me put it back on the screen. It says the eyes of a dedicated person show an inner fortitude and charisma that the eyes of an ordinary do not, right? So if you're truthful, your eyes will tell you, right? Your eyes will give you away. The truth will out, as the British would say. It goes on. Scientifically, yes, we know an eye is an eye, and it's just a thing. It's just another part of your body. There's nothing physically unique about your eyes. I mean, as far as organs go, right? It's not like any more magical than any other part of your body. But spiritually, yeah, sees right to you. It says, for us to achieve a similar depth of character, we must live according to the inherent nobility of our natures. Each one of our senses is not simply an information gathering faculty, but is a channel of expression. So not only is our eyes a way to inherently give away who we are, but in a philosophical sense, so is the rest of us, right? It's that integrity, right? Integrity through everything we do. Not only in what we speak, but our thoughts and our bodies. When I was growing up in church, we we had this idea that God can see see what you think. They can hear what you think. So you weren't supposed to think bad thoughts either, which really came to a head when you find out that maybe your mind isn't something you can physically hold on to all the time. Maybe it's something that just spontaneously happens, right? But I know what they're getting at, right? Through dedication and practice and mindfulness and meditation, you can practice these focused thoughts and kind of live in this more mindful place as you go forward. And that's what this is getting at, right? That's what this chapter is really coming down to, is the inherent character of ourselves will come out when we practice our lessons, when we dedicate ourselves. This will show who we truly are, and we can get this natural version of us to come out. Taoism and these lessons and these practices, it's not about changing who you are, right? It's not about saying, well, you shouldn't be doing this and you should be doing that, and all this stuff to try and make you somehow a different person. No. I'm trying to get you to be a more truthful version of you, right? A more natural version of you. That version of you that sits in your room and when you don't speak, or like you're laying down, you're going to bed and you just have your thoughts, right? That version of you, that's you, right? That's the real Taoist you. But when you're around your job or you're around your family or your friends, you put on different hats, right? For me, I have my dad hat and I have my manager hat at work. I have my husband hat, right? And they're all a little different, but they don't have to be. I think society teaches us that trick of kind of always controlling what we say or do based on who is around us. But what we learn through Taoism and what we learn through Tao Te Ching and through this 365 Tao is that there is a version of us we can share with everybody all the time. And it just takes a lot of dedication and practice to find that version of you. All right. Let's move on. Chapter 104, Readiness. A knife keeps its edge only with honing and proper cutting. A warrior's virtue is readiness. A sage's virtue is awareness. This life is so competitive and challenging that one must remain in constant readiness for the problems and conflicts that come with each day. That is why followers of Tao meld the way of the warrior and sage. They want the courage and preparedness of the fighter, the luminous perception of the wise. Each day, they dedicate themselves to maintaining their characters and perpetuating their development. But how does one maintain one's edge without blunting? There's a fable about a king who was watching his butcher. He was amazed that the man could dismember a whole ox without much effort and without dulling his knife. Seeking to learn, the king questioned his servant, who said that his secret was to insert his knife only in the spaces between muscles, thus parting the body along its natural lines. In this way, where an ordinary butcher had to grind his blade daily, he only had to sharpen his knife once a year. From this, we can learn that we must first hone ourselves to a sharp edge, but the proper use of our talents is equally essential. We must remember to take action along the basic lines and seams of the day. If we do this, we can never be opposed for long. So the story about the ox comes from another Taoist text called Zhuangzi, which I have a copy of right here. This is the annotated graphic novel version of Zhuangzi, illustrated by C.C. Tsai and a foreword by Edward Slingerland. I highly recommend it. If This isn't sponsored or anything, but if you ever want to learn Zhuangzi, I highly recommend this book. Zhuangzi's stories, unlike Lao Tzu's, are much more narrative. They're funny. They are very story-like. They're not poetic like Lao Tzu is. So a lot of people will start with Zhuangzi and then work their way back to Lao Tzu once they've learned a little bit of lessons. But anyway, so yes, this story of the ox and the butcher being able to use this knife continuously and only need to sharpen it every year. A little bit more detail that's not shared in this particular retelling of it is that the butcher goes on to explain that, you know, an amateur butcher will sharpen his knife every day, right? And a professional butcher will sharpen his blade, you know, once a month. But this master butcher only had to sharpen his blade once a year because he used the path of least resistance to do great things. It is a allegory. It's a metaphor, sorry, for Wu Wei, for effortless action. Ding Ming-Dao does a great job of not using Chinese terms to explain his concepts, but I will teach a little bit of them. Wu Wei is an idea where you can do very talented, very traditionally difficult things, but make them not difficult instead. Like the butcher carving an ox. Yes, there it is. Completion of the story. But in this chapter, not only is it an example of effortless action, but he uses it to teach readiness. So now that we know the story, let's talk about that. How do you live your life? Or how should you live your life? Are we supposed to live our lives just willy-nilly and just kind of let whatever happens smack us around? Are we not supposed to have goals? Are we not supposed to be prepared for problems? Right? You know, what about if we live by ourselves? Well, that's super easy, right? I can just go to work and come home and sit here and not do anything. Well, what about those who find us with responsibilities? What about our families? What about our friends? You know, what about if we're, you know, a manager at work? What about those guys? Am I just supposed to let them drown and just not care? No, you're supposed to be prepared. You're supposed to be ready. As a Taoist, we're not taught to just let ourselves be smacked around all the time. No, we very much are supposed to be ready. You know, that butcher with his knife, he didn't just wake up one day and discover he was a master. No, he practiced, he dedicated, he prepared. He learned this trade over and over again, all through his life, to now he could do it effortlessly, right? He prepared himself for a very, very, very long time. And it, you know, I like how at the end of each chapter, it just like tells you what it means. Because unlike these two books, the Tao Te Ching and Zhuangzi, sometimes you don't get those explanations. So yeah, from this, we can learn that we must face ourselves, first to hone ourselves as a sharp edge, but the proper use of our talents is equally essential. So remember, every day, prepare yourself, take action, right? Don't be a bump on the log, right? Don't just let people tell you what to do, right? Being naturally you doesn't mean always giving in. Being naturally you means that you go for what you desire, and if you don't desire it, you don't. It sounds simple, right? It sounds easy. And in a way, it is, right? Wu Wei. But as we just learned, it's effortless action, even though when we look at that, when someone else might look at that action, it seems very skilled. So we'll get there. We'll all get there. I'm not there, right? Don't don't think I'm some sort of crazy master just because I'm sitting here on this call and recording this. I'm not. So we'll get there together. Okay, let's move on. Chapter 105, Compassion. Once you've seen the face of God, you see that same face on everyone you meet. The true God has no face. The true Tao has no name. But we cannot identify with that until we are a very high level of insight. Until then, the gods with faces and the Tao with names are still more worthy of veneration and study than the illusions of the world. With long and sincere training, it is possible to see the face of God. Holiness is not about scientific objectivity. It is about a deep and clear recognition of the true nature of life. Your attitude towards your God will be different than anyone else's God. Divinity is a reflection of your own understanding. If your experience differs from others, that does not invalidate your sense of godliness. You will have no doubts after you have seen. Knowing God is the source of compassion in our lives. We realize that our separation from others is artificial. We are neither separate from other people nor from Tao. It is only our own egotism that leads us to define ourselves as individuals. In fact, a direct experience of God is a direct experience of the utter university of life. If we allow it to change our way of thinking, we will understand our essential oneness with all things. Oh boy. How does God look? Once you see God, you will see that same face on every person you meet. Okay. So let's break this one down. Have you ever listened to Alan Watts? If you don't know who Alan Watts is, I highly recommend you pick up a book or go to YouTube and find it. Find one of his speeches. Lots of his speeches are online. Alan Watts is a great philosopher, entertainer, writer, and he talked a lot about how we're all connected. He talked about what is connection, right? What is spirit? Talked about Tao a lot, actually. So let's see if I can break this down for you guys. Tao is the essence of the universe. It is existence. It's not a God for most people. It is reality itself. It is the driving energy behind the universe progressing. It is in all things. It is all things. There are many names for this. One could be, if you're a Christian, God's will, right? If you're a Buddhist or a Hindu, it could be the Brahman. However, I believe that because all things are Tao, that means we're all very real connected, right? We are connected in a very real sense. And it is our egos and our id that unfortunately have walled us off from each other. Now you can see this inherent connection even scientifically. If we zoom in to a body, what do we see? Well, we see cells. When we view in even further, we see DNA. and we zoom in even further, we see atoms and electrons. But when we get to the quantum subatomic particle, it's just all energy fields. It's just all stuff. And the only difference between what is me and what is this air, the stuff we call oxygen, is just the density of those fields, right? So how disconnected are we, right? In fact, we can even get into quantum entanglement where an electron can be the same here or a light year away, right? Theoretically, if we affect this electron, its quantumly entangled pair will also affect far away without us having to do anything, right? We are much, much more connected than you guys, than we could all possibly imagine, okay? And if we are connected, right? If we are together, then don't we deserve to be compassionate to each other? I mean, do you look in the mirror and beat yourself up? Because I bet you feel bad. I bet it makes you feel like crap. I bet it makes you feel the same way when someone else does the same thing to you. Right? Why does that hurt? Well, because we are them. We see ourselves in them. And I think they see themselves in us because of this connection and the compassion that we exert to ourselves will also be shown in the way we treat other people. If we go to back to this idea of God and concepts, this concept of God is, as it says here, a source of that compassion, right? The Tao is the source of that compassion within us. And we realize, as it says, that our separation from others is artificial. We are neither separate from other people nor from Tao, because, as of course, we are all Tao, and Tao is all things. That's not to say we shouldn't study these external things, right? We should study these things externally because our human brains like to categorize. And I think it helps understand if we have names and break things down and try to articulate what's going on. But at the same time, it's important to remember that things are not different, that we are connected. Think of the yin yang, right? Think of it that way. The yin and the yang are separate, but not separate. There is black within the white and white within the black, and they are always rotating, always spinning, one trying to overtake the other, connected in all things, right? This chapter basically is describing the yin yang to you in a more complex way. In the Tao Te Ching, one of the chapters is the creation of the universe. You start with 1, and then from 1, 2, from 2, 3, and from 3 to 10,000 things, right? You have the Tao. From the Tao, you have 2, yin and yang. And from the yin and yang, you have 3, which is the yin yang. And then you have all things that spread from it. 10,000 things, as they used to say. All right. And to conclude, if we allow it to change our way of thinking, we will understand the essential oneness with all things. We are one. You're never alone. You're not. Even I'm not alone in this green screen, in this room, with nobody in it. I'm not alone. I have you guys, and you have me, maybe once a week. right? Or more. That's a good thing about these recordings is you can come and listen whenever you want. Or hey, we have a Discord server. You can join our Discord community and chat 24 hours a day. I'll be here. I may be asleep sometimes. But yeah, message me. Never alone. You don't have to be alone. Okay, moving on. 106. Carefree. 2 ducks nestled in lakeside grass, both marked by the same brilliant purple at the wing. Water provides food, bath, and play. What need do they have for scholarship? Animals need no schooling. They are perfect, without any need for long instruction. They know what to do by instinct and example. Tao is always there for them. It sustains them and nurtures them. There is no need for them to be specifically aware of Tao or to study it. They have no rational consciousness to separate them from Tao. It is only humanity that constantly divorces itself from Tao. We therefore need methods of reintegration. If we could go beyond the interfering sense of the self, then we would know Tao in as constant and carefree manner as ducks. Forget learning, say those who follow Tao, but what they don't append is that you must first have learning before you can forget it. If you would be unencumbered by the weight of knowledge, then you must return to a state of deep intuitiveness. This is not the same as mere selfish behavior, just doing what you feel like doing, because your actions are likely to be directed or dictated more by lusts, obsessions, compulsions, and habits than anything natural. Only through the clarification of spiritual training will you reach the ground of deep intuition and the freedom that it affords. Yes. Carefree. In the chat, it says, yes, we are not alone. Tao is always present. That is very comforting for this time of individualism. Indeed it is. I think we've never been so individualized. Isn't that strange? How can we be more connected than ever, yet still be so independent? Or so individualized? Maybe it was a reaction. Maybe, whether it be the internet or globalism, global economy, maybe it's a natural pushback. You know, I talked to my mom recently and she felt that we were losing our culture as it started to blend in with other people's culture. And in one way, it's very natural. When two cultures are exposed to each other, they will be blending and learning from each other. But when something is gained, something is lost. And that's true. Whenever I look at politics, which I don't like talking about on here, but the Tao Te Ching is a political statement, right? It is a political document by nature. In fact, it talks in great length about rulers and how to rule and how to be a king or an emperor or a leader. Knowing that you're connected is important, not only in your daily personal life, but in the lives of others, right? It's such a confusing life, isn't it? Like we strive to be alone, but we strive to put everything we do online. And then, then we get mad that people don't like everything we do. but we want to be connected so badly that we're willing to share everything, just to kind of feel that way. And the more we begin to share, the more alone we feel. Yeah, it's irony. But I guess the real irony is that we're already connected. We just need to strip away the artificial connections in order to see the true connections. And then we won't have to feel alone. I could talk all day about this, but let's jump back into 106, carefree. Okay. I guess it connects, right? I mean, this middle paragraph here, it says, it is only humanity that constantly divorces itself from Tao. It's true. If I could get this thing to stop. If we could go beyond the interfering sense of the self, then we could know Tao is as constant and carefree, in a carefree manner, as the ducks, right? I was told once, one of the most Tao things you can do is read the Tao Te Ching, right? Read everything you can about Taoism. Read it all, even if you disagree with it, right? Read it all, study it, memorize it, learn it, and then ignore it, right? Don't touch anything, right? Just try to live your life and then forget all about it, right? Forget everything you've learned, and then come back and rediscover everything as though it were brand new. Why would you do that? Right? What does that mean? Well, if you learn something and you study it and you memorize it, you've internalized it, right? It's become a natural part of you, or you have unlocked that natural state within you. And that changes how you will see that text and how you will internalize the text when you come back to it later on. I think it's actually amazing. About, I would say, once a year, or maybe a little bit more often, I read this all the way through, cover to cover. And it's always interesting how I see something new, or how I learn something that is more valuable than what it was before. And why is that? Well, our lives are not static. They change over time. Our situations are different. The people around us are different. Our financial situations are different. It happens, right? We move on. So trying to pick these books up and learning, that's great. That's super important. You should, especially when you're starting out, you should learn everything you can. But knowledge isn't everything, right? Experiencing, that's the way we live, right? That is life. The quote here in this chapter where it says, forget learning, that is directly from the Tao Te Ching, and especially from Zhuangzi. He loves talking about how, just learning and academic, learning for knowledge's sake is useless, right? Just learning stuff about random things that have no value to you is filling your head with stuff you could be learning other things about. That's important, right? So yeah, forgetting learning, say those who follow Tao, Zhuangzi, Lao Tzu. But what they don't append is that you must first have learning before you can forget. So yes, so when you read these texts and they talk about, oh, don't learn, knowledge is bad, they don't mean all knowledge is bad. They mean useless knowledge is bad, or hanging on to that knowledge, right? Locking yourself in that knowledge box is not good. It will not do you, it will do you a disservice, right? If you allow that to happen. All right, let's move on. Maybe we'll do one more and we'll call it a day. 107, withdrawal. Activity is essential, but exhausting, and its importance is only on the surface. Withdraw into Tao at the end of the day. Returning is renewal. Each day is filled with activity. We rush around from meeting. We make all sorts of arrangements for the future. Such doings are important, but they are not all that there is in life. Even as we engage in them, we must remember that all human endeavors are temporary and provisional. We cannot allow our accomplishments to divorce us from what is actually happening in the world. It is imperative that we withdraw to reflect upon the day's events and collect ourselves from the continuation of our path. There is no need to go to a temple, a sacred spot, or a special room. We do not need elaborate rituals. All we need is a simple and natural turning within. This is why followers of Tao always use the word returning. They recognize the necessity of activity in life, but they also recognize the need to return to Tao. And Tao is the source of all things. And in the source, one finds the renewal that one needs to go on with life. This back and forth movement between the source and the activity of life is the movement of all things. It's all connected, guys. It's all connected. And withdrawing yourself, removing yourself, while it may seem useful, actually really can't be done, right? You are connected. We're all connected. If you go live out in the woods, you're connecting visually, perhaps with the plants and the grass and the animals and the sky and the wind and the rain, but you're still connected. So if you're going to be connected wherever you are, be connected where you are. Be connected where you found yourself. You led yourself here, right? Your actions, your journey put you exactly where you are today for whatever reason. So why remove yourself from where you put yourself? Some people say, well, I shouldn't be here. I wasn't supposed to be here. Really? Are you sure? Because you're here. There's no other way to do it. You can't go back, right? I was told once that worrying about yesterday is regret. Worrying about tomorrow is anxiety. So instead, focus on today. Focus on where you are, right? Feeling withdrawal is natural. Feeling that you want to withdraw is also natural. A lot of philosophers will say that human emotions are bad, that you should rid yourself of these, of sadness, and you can be happy all the time, right? You can only feel happiness, which may come as a surprise if you've ever tried to rid yourself of sadness. You can't, right? Or I can't. I've never been able to, right? How do you do that? Like, isn't that struggle? Isn't that strife trying to tell yourself that a part of you is unnatural or is not good. It's me. How can parts of me be bad while parts of me be good? Like it doesn't make any sense. So what I believe and what Taoism will teach you is all of you is natural. It's all a part of you. Those feelings of doubt, that's you. Those feelings of joy and happiness, that's also you. And when you learn to accept all parts of you, and when you understand that they are all a collective whole, then we can learn to accept and move forward, right? So in this chapter, as always, let's skip to the end. This is why followers of Tao always use the word returning. They recognize the necessity of activity of life, but they also recognize the need to return to Tao, right? We're always coming back, right? We're always, trying to remind ourselves that we are whole, right? We have this natural tendency to want to pull away when we're sad or shut down when we're angry, but that's, as we've learned, not possible. So we pull ourselves back, we return, right? We come back to who we are. We equalize with our surroundings. We balance, right, with all things. And that is also very natural. That is who we are. That's the real us, guys. You shouldn't be ashamed of that. People are like, oh, I fell off the wagon. I'm trying to give this thing up, but I just keep doing it. Like, well, maybe that's who you are, right? Maybe that's the real you constantly coming out. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have goals, but it's not against your natural you to want to change. But if you're constantly coming back to something and it's not destructive, if it's a harmonious act, then that is you, right? And that's how you know, is when you return, right? Always return, always come back. It's that simple sometimes. Okay, well, I'm going to shut this down. My voice is about to give out. Hopefully next week, I will be back to normal. I appreciate you all for hanging out today. As always, if you like what you hear, if you like what you see, please feel free to make donations. I give everything I receive back to the authors in tips and paying for their writing. Please check out projectjade.net, the Taoist.online. Hundreds of great and amazing articles for you to check out on both those websites. 365 Tao by Ding Ming-Dao is the book we're working towards. I highly recommend it. 1 chapter per day. Man, I'm just going to lose my voice at the end of the day. I know it. But thank you so much. Look for this podcast on all major podcast networks later on today, and the edited video will be up later this week. I hope you have a good week. Join me 9 a.m. next Sunday right here on YouTube, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.